Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here, and I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you. Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvive's Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference. Hello and welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach. Susie Walton and I created this podcast 5 years ago. We are having so much fun with it that we just keep going because we keep meeting more and more amazing people that are doing what we're doing, which is helping athletes, student athletes, figure out, how they can live their best life doing what they love while they get a great education. And I have this beautiful guest on today that I'm so excited to get to speak with because it's funny, small world connections, but mostly through my son now, my oldest son, Kalen, who's playing D3 basketball at Claremont-McKenna. He's going to Claremont Graduate School. So he's one of those athletes that's been able to, and it feels like they keep getting to play longer and longer, but he has one last year of eligibility. He graduated high school in 2019, did a gap year at prep school, played for Boston University for 3, graduated in 3, and had 2 years of eligibility left. So he's been able to continue to play. And Erica Perkins Jasper is the athletic director at Claremont-McKenna, Claremont-Mudd-Scripps, which is also Scripps is where my sister went. So we have all these wonderful small world connections. But thank you so much for making time to be on. I can't wait to dive in and talk about all of the things that are D3 athletics.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be here. And as you know, I love your podcast. Also love your book that's hiding over your shoulder there. Recommend it to a lot of my sports parenting friends as I have young children who are just starting this journey. So thrilled to be here. And obviously, big CJ fan here at CMS.
Yay! We'll get into that later. Okay, let's start with you. And I love your story, having grown up with 2 parents who were Huskies, and your dream to go play at University of Washington tennis. Your dad was a prolific tennis player himself. Tell us how did that journey into college athletics go for you?
Yeah, it was a funny one in that, as you said, my dad played college tennis and college basketball for the University of Washington. I grew up 5 minutes away from UW. My mom went to school there as well. Lots of purple and gold. I think there's a Christmas card when I'm a little kid and a cheerleader uniform, which is ironic on so many levels at some point. But yeah, as I started going through the process, I played basketball and tennis kind of throughout elementary school and into middle school. By the time I got to middle school, tennis, even in the early 90s, was a sport where it became very, very challenging to play more than one sport at a high level due to the travel that kind of was required. By the time I got to age 12, 13, I was playing kind of tournaments all up and down the I-5 corridor, Seattle, Portland, Vancouver. And so focused solely on tennis. If you would have asked me at 13, 14, 15, I was going to go to the University of Washington, just like my dad. I was going to play tennis there. I went to a ton of men's and women's basketball games. I went to a ton of tennis matches, men's and women's. And so when the recruiting process started, and you know this as well, is we were going through the recruiting process as prospective student athletes with the emerging or no internet. So I probably didn't know what was out there because I was wholly focused on University of Washington. But I did get some interest from a wide variety of coaches, but really started the process thinking I was going to go to Washington. Well, fast forward to actually going through the process, University of Washington didn't offer me a scholarship. They offered a couple other prospective student athletes. And luckily, my dad was a purveyor of decent advice all the time, subtly. And he'd had me keep in touch with the Washington State coach. And interestingly, Washington State had a fairly new coach and had gone from, I think, never beating University of Washington to I think they'd beaten them the previous season. So he was like, look, it's a competitive team. It could be something different. And so visited Washington State with no offer from Washington, got an offer from Washington State, was still very much on the fence. And I always share this with people because I think my dad probably provided the best advice in that moment. I was ready to walk on at Washington, which, okay, now that I'm a parent, I probably realize my parents were like, hi, you're going to spend our money and turn down a full ride scholarship to Washington State. And my dad just shared with me, he was like, you need to go where you're wanted. He's like, this coach believes that you can be a really good player. You're gonna, by being a scholarship athlete in the sport of tennis, I was automatically in the top 8, 6 people play. He was like, your chances to actually play college tennis for someone who wants you seems a lot higher. So I did what probably very few people who grew up Husky fans do and went to Washington State University, and probably was the best decision of my life. I got away from home, learned some independence. I had a coach who was a great fit for me. From a tennis perspective, a lot of people don't get better during college tennis, and you've probably seen this even in volleyball and also now in men's basketball. It was a program where if you really wanted to work hard, you would get better. And I timed it with the arrival of 3 other freshmen, and by the end of my freshman year, we made the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. And it was pretty exciting. And you've lived through that as a parent, and you've seen your son experience that as a student. It was really exciting. In my 4 years, we made NCAAs as a team all 4 years. I think I might be the only player actually to ever play in 4 team tournaments, which is probably what I'm most proud of, in that I was a part of 4 very good teams. And so, like many former student athletes, I started to finish up, and I actually had a medical redshirt year in the middle. I tore a tendon in my wrist and had to rehab. I was a full-time grad student my last year and had the realization that I didn't really want to leave college sports. And I had an athletic director who was telling me I was going to be an athletic director one day, which the irony of that is funny. But I decided I wanted to be a college coach. And so I finished playing in May of, it was a long time ago, 2002. And I think by July, I was named the head coach at Georgia Southern University. And so,
how did that happen? How did they find you? Or
I mean, again, early in the internet age, believe it or not, this Division I head coaching job was a graduate assistant position. So there was some tennis jobs website that usually had college coaching assistant and head coaching positions. I saw it as a GA position and went, great, I can finish my master's, be an assistant coach for a year, kind of go from there. And I started the interview process, and they were like, oh, actually, our head coach went full-time into administration. We don't have enough budget for a salary. You would be the GA and the head coach. So probably they did, in hindsight, they didn't have a lot of choices, and I was it. Also now doing the job that I do, pretty wild to hire a head coach straight out of playing. I mean, I was 23 and almost done with my master's, but I was 23 and had a lot to learn.
Although the UNC field hockey coach, right? Like she just did that and won a national championship. So like, how cool is that?
I did an okay job. I did not do that good of a job. And so, but it was a really fun experience. I was, anything from, I think, 1.5 to 4 years older than most of my players. I was fortunate in that I was a pretty good player. So I think they trusted me, particularly on the tennis advice side. And then I learned a lot on how to run a program, because at a job like that, you're by yourself, no assistant coach. You've got to learn all the different parts. I moved from Pacific Northwest to rural Southeast Georgia, big life change. So probably a real pivotal moment. Again, one of those scenarios where I followed my dad's advice and went where I was wanted, and very thankful to get my foot in the door. Then from there, I realized pretty quickly in the tennis world, if you wanted to be a great college tennis coach, which I really thought that's what I was going to be, you needed a high level assistant job. And so I actually took an assistant job 2 years later at the College William and Mary, where you attended, and got to know your college coach fairly well at that time, but was really fortunate. As you know, William Mary at that time was anywhere from kind of top 5 to top 20 in the country. So got to work with an elite team, got to work for one of the best college coaches in the nation still today, Kevin Epley. And I would say those 2 years was my real coaching internship. I learned a lot about actually coaching college tennis. I actually learned a lot about how to be an administrator from Barb Blosser, who you probably remember. And I think learned a little bit more about the landscape, and then was well positioned at that point. I got hired as the head coach at Michigan State University. And when I took that job, I was like, this is it. This is the pinnacle. What Michigan State, very similar to Washington State in the tennis world, underdog mentality, great fit for me. I bought a cute house right by Spartan Stadium.
And you're what, like 29 years old or something?
I was 27 when I
there you go.
took that
Not
job.
even.
Yeah. So I thought I had life figured out. And about a year or so in, as I got to know more folks in the tennis world and also in college athletics, there was a little voice telling me that, maybe I should look at administration. I've always been a hyper organized person. I loved helping coaches, helping people, helping student athletes. I started to think about, and it's funny now because I am 45, but, okay, in 20 years, did I want to see myself on a tennis court? And I was like, oof, I don't know, as much as I love tennis. And so interestingly, about the same time, I ended up getting connected with somebody at the USTA, and they were actually hiring for a collegiate position at the USTA, and college tennis had fallen out of favor in that time with the USTA, which is wild seeing how much they embrace it now. And so again, kind of following my dad's advice once again, and an inkling that this could be a really good opportunity for me to see if I was good at being an administrator and wanted to be one, I went ahead and took the plunge and went to the USTA. I was the manager of junior and collegiate competition there, and I was there for about 4 years. And as I say, like, my working for Kevin at William and Mary was maybe my coaching apprenticeship or internship. Part 2 of that was honestly when I was in my administrative job at the USTA. What I had access to was the best national coaches in the country, got to be very good friends with Kathy Rinaldi, who I absolutely adore and think is one of the best coaches I've ever met. Had access to basically the top 20 coaches in college tennis on the men's and women's side. So became very good friends with folks like Peter Smith and Roland Thornquist and Lily Faroud. And that access and ability to see really great coaching up close was absolutely incredible. It was a blank slate there. I got to create lots of amazing college tennis programming. But as many people who work for NGBs, and I think you got a lot of experience in that space as well, there usually is an expiration date to those types of jobs. And I think for me, while I think I realized at that point I wanted to be an administrator as my career, I was really fortunate in my coaching career. It was like I got a great job, and then I got a better job, and then I got another job, and then I left. And I never was anywhere for more than 2 years. I never got to finish what I started. I suspected that I was probably a pretty good tennis coach, but I never got to really prove that. Taking a team from a losing record to a slightly over 500 record, while really impressive while you're doing it, I was like, I think I have more. I think we can win a conference championship. And so around the time that I had my first son in end of 2011, early 2012, the New Mexico head coaching job opened up, and I was really fortunate to kind of wiggle my way in there as a candidate, even though I hadn't coached college tennis in 4 years, and got the job. I'd taken over teams that weren't super strong, both at Georgia Southern and Michigan State, and I was brimming with confidence that I could turn the ship around immediately. And we went 5-15 in my first year there, coaching probably harder and better than I ever coached, to be quite honest. But I was really fortunate with timing and the student athletes and the administrators I had there. By year 2, we were second in the conference, lost in the conference final while I had my second child, which I don't actually recommend coaching while 7 to 8 months pregnant. I think Caleb came a little early, probably because of that. And then year 3, we won the conference. And so in a lot of ways, it was a little bit of a mission accomplished, and the timing was right once again. And as I've said, I've been really fortunate with timing. I was pursued by the new CEO of the ITA, which is the Intercollegiate Tennis Association and the governing body for college tennis. And Tim Russell reached out to me and said, how would you like to be the COO of the ITA? And I learned a long time ago as a woman in athletics, if at age, well, was I at the time, 36 years old, someone's offering you a COO job for a governance organization, you probably shouldn't say no. So even though I probably had a couple more years that I wanted to keep coaching and winning at New Mexico, took the job at the ITA, was in that role for 4 years, got a really wide variety of experience, but this is the part of the journey which really had been very Division I heavy up to that point, where I truly started to fall in love with Division III. And part of my job at the ITA was to serve all of college tennis. So we worked with, Division I, Division II, Division III, NAI, junior college coaches, and really serving as a resource for all of them, and loved that role of helping coaches. And kept looking at Division III going, this seems to be everything that's right with college athletics. Right before I got to the ITA, the Power 5 had emerged. And even when I was at New Mexico, that job went from being a very good job to maybe a little more challenging as the Power 5 emerged and there began to be that separation. And each year there seemed to be some kind of escalation in the distancing of Division I from the rest of college sports. And I laugh now because I don't even think I could imagine where we are at this point. But I would say maybe 3-4 years in to my ITA experience, I just said, okay, Division III may be where I end up landing. And I was very fortunate. I was contacted by the search firm for this job here at CMS, and I had more familiarity with Claremont-Mudd-Scripps than probably a lot of other Division III athletic departments because of the strength in the sport of tennis. Both programs had won national championships in the last decade. I knew both of the tennis coaches fairly well because both were and still are 2 of the top coaches in the country. And so decided it would be a really good experience to apply for an AD job. So that's actually how you get an AD job. You just decided it'd be a good idea to try, but really didn't have any expectations. My goal was to get an interview and get that interview experience. Then I got the interview and really liked it and really wanted it. And I was actually discussing this with a friend the other day. It was very nerve-wracking, the interview experience, but feel very fortunate that I ended up in this seat. And I'm now entering year 6. So we both have done 5 years in our current journeys. I love what I get to do on a daily basis. As you know, I would put our head coaches and staff up there with any group of head coaches and staff that I worked at any different division. Incredible group of humans. And so I did have the tall task of being a brand new athletic director in a department with tremendous staff, a lot of excellence and success in its history, and trying to navigate how to lead and really emphasize the amazing things that we were doing here, and also trying not to screw up all the good things that were happening. So
yeah. Well, I can imagine too, you come in, you have so many programs that have done so well. Yes, you have a huge resume in one aspect of that, right? In tennis, in the tennis world, but to come in and have a leadership style that allows, like that, I can imagine that would be a pretty tall task, knowing that you had, basketball coaches and tennis coaches and golf coaches and water polo that are all, crushing it. Like, how did you approach that?
So probably my natural leadership style was a really good match, even if at first maybe I had doubts and probably our coaches and staff did. I lead an athletic department, or even if I'm leading a committee or a different organization, kind of how I coached college tennis. So I view myself as ideally the ultimate support person, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of people refer to it as maybe leading from the back of the room. I've called it leading from the bench, because on tennis, in a tennis match, I would be sitting on the bench, but guess what? Like, the player is out there playing the match, and I'm hopefully providing occasional tidbits that help them be better. But honestly, most of the time I'm staying out of their way and not trying to derail them. And so I think that fit really well because we had really successful coaches and programs. And so a lot of my work initially was getting to know all the head coaches, getting to know how our programs ran, trying to bring maybe a modern approach to administration without moving too quickly for an organization that had existed just fine with maybe less administration over the years. Interesting wrinkle in that kind of 9 months in, the pandemic hit, and so we canceled all sports without me having completed a full year as AD. And then, as I think we never had students back until the fall of 2021. Obviously that was very challenging, but upon reflection for me, I got to know our head coaches and senior staff really well on a personal level, because we weren't coaching, we weren't doing a lot of recruiting. We also were dealing with our own personal challenges that the pandemic brought. And I'm actually really thankful for that time that I got to know our staff so well. And I think was able to build some trust with people that it just may have been actually a slower process if we'd been sprinting along as we were when I started. So very circuitous journey, but really happy to be at a place that truly values the student athlete and that kind of complete student athlete experience that I think you're seeing CJ experience here.
And you are the perfect person for that, being an academic All-American. So academics was always important to you, right? Like, and then you now, I'm sure as a mom too, as you went into the pandemic, were your boys home? So you're parenting, are you teaching school at home too?
Yes, it was pretty entertaining. So obviously we went back and the kids were sent home from school, and my husband is a massage therapist. And so you can imagine his massage business was really humming along during the pandemic. So all four of us are at home. We have a kindergartner and a second grader trying to do online school. I'm trying to Zoom with, 17 head coaches and do updates for student athletes. And so luckily I was afforded access back to my office fairly quickly, because I'm not sure how that would have gone in our 1,200 square foot house for more than a month or two. And I'm very thankful. My husband really did a great job handling a majority of the schoolwork and keeping the kids organized and entertained. For those people who live in Claremont, they'll also know that we spent a lot of time walking the dogs around Claremont to kind of pass the time. And so that was our pandemic experience. Small spaces, small children, and all of us trying to get our work done.
Yeah, it was a crazy time. And on one hand, it feels like just yesterday, and on the other hand, feels like it was years and years and years ago, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about D3. And we have a lot of listeners, and I get this question all the time when I'm talking to parents who are trying to help their kid navigate. Perhaps they never played sports, or they never played in college at least. So they don't really understand the divisions, how it works. Why would you choose a D3 over a D1? What are you getting by going to a D3? And I have known and had a sister and a high school boyfriend that went to McKenna, and my twin sister was at Scripps. So I've been in love with that campus for years and years and years. And now having CJ there and seeing, I feel like what D1 was 30 years ago is now what D3 has become, which is an amazing opportunity where you get great academics, you get high level athletics, Sweet 16, and you just a little plug, and you get this amazing opportunity to grow as a human being, that the ball will stop bouncing for us all. And maybe even you do want to go on to be coaching, or you want to stay in sports, but you're going to get all these tools that are going to help you be successful in life. Versus right now, what D1 and the transfer portal, 10,000 kids in the transfer portal, less than half of them will even land anywhere. The NIL deals, which are crazy, which are causing, the professionalization of college athletics to become, coaches are worried about their jobs. They're worried about, their win-loss record. So there isn't a lot of development going on. And again, putting my mom hat on, the experience that CJ had at Claremont this year as a human, and that coach Scalmanini cares more about my son as a human than he does as a basketball player. And he loves basketball, but that is not what he leads with, is so apparent in everything he does. I mean, can you just speak to to parents who might not understand what that whole experience can be about? What are the pluses and minuses maybe of that?
Yeah, I mean, you encompass a lot of the great points about maybe the differences between Division 3 and Division 1. And I think one of the big ones is, and I even think back to my experience, because I think you're spot on, and especially having worked at William and Mary, 100% your William and Mary Division 1 volleyball experience was very similar to probably what CJ's CMS experience is today, right? Great coaching, great education, students first. And that is, if anyone was to take away the basics of it, that is the joy and the beauty of Division 3. But I even think about my experience, as I told the story, is I chose Washington State because I was offered a tennis scholarship there, and tennis was a big driver. Now, did I find an academic program that suited me? Yes. Did I do the honors program and I had small classes and I made it work? Yes. But athletics was the driver for the decision. I think the beauty here is that majority of our students choose their institution for that academic program or experience. And I probably am oversimplifying it for even saying academic. I would say it's the academic and social experience that they get. I also think our students, structurally, they're going to have a little bit more balance. As you know, being a Division 3 elite student athlete like CJ is, you actually have to do a lot of stuff on your own, because the coaches are only allowed smaller windows of contact. So what I actually start to find is that our really elite teams are much more self-motivated and driven than some of the teams that I've seen at other levels. But the balance is probably the best part. Our students here, many of them, if they play a sport that is during one semester, they will do a year abroad their junior year during that other semester. They have internships in the summer. There's a number of clubs and institutes at all of our institutions where they can get interesting experiences, explore their passions, and really challenge themselves holistically. And then I would say the biggest thing is kind of what you shared about Coach Scalmanini is, I mean, let's not lie. He loves basketball and he wants to win, and he is very good at those things. And our coaches do view our students as humans first, and they see themselves as a big part in a 4-year journey for those students. And that's just a different level of investment and care. Another myth that I try to combat is kind of too, when folks look at kind of the level of play, and I think you saw this at the top of Division III men's basketball this year, is it's not a straight hierarchy, right? It's not Division I is the best, then it's Division II, then it's Division III. In some of our sports where we're very elite, so tennis, probably golf, volleyball, we have a lot of student athletes who are making decisions between scholarship offers at Division I schools and pursuing winning a national championship here with us, and making a decision that really suits their academic and personal needs. And so that's probably the one as well that I think people get a little bit lost, is they think, oh, Division III, it's going to be a big step down in level. It's not at the top, and I'm very fortunate to work at a place where the institutions believe in athletics as part of kind of the student experience. And we've supported our coaches and programs to put themselves in position to win SCIAC championships, to put themselves in position to make NCAAs and be competitive in that space. And so we have really good, excellent student athletes here who are playing and competing at a very high level. They've just made that choice to have a much more balanced experience, which again is much more akin to your life or my life as college student athletes in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, I attended the banquet this year, and the men's basketball team made it the first time to the Sweet 16 ever. Won the conference and went on to have an amazing run. So came out for the banquet, and to hear Coach Scal, as everybody likes to call him, talk about every single player on that roster, not like, hey, good job, bud, but had deep, in-depth, had clearly knew him, and again, the way that I experienced at William & Mary, that, we didn't have sports psychologists or even really much of an assistant, like volunteer assistants or whatever. So it was always like, you really got to know your head coach. And what I see now at Division I, mostly through basketball and volleyball world, but these kids don't, my middle son's playing, D1, and you don't really talk to the head coach. I mean, yes, on the floor, maybe for 4 or 5 minutes during practice, but it's all the assistants and the dobos and the operations people that are checking in on you. And it's such a business now that there isn't the high touch and high feel that you get from, I think, D3. The other thing that I will say, we went out to watch one of the games, which was amazing. We live 45 minutes on a good day from Claremont, so we were able to see, I would say, 80 to 90% of the games this year. And we're going to take CJ out to dinner afterwards, and his phone starts blowing up, and he's like, oh, there's this alum, and he's texting me, and he just watched the game, and he really he works at Apple, and he'd like to jump on a call with me, like parents, right? That's what we care about too, right? Like, we know that when our kids go play in college, most of them, that will be their last experience, and we're fine with that. But what's the network like? What is this? How is this going to help him grow as a person? And ultimately, yes, what career will he be able to make out of this?
Yeah, and it's that investment, I think, that is really important. Like, to your point, you've got experienced head coaches at the Division III level, and that head coach is going to be intimately involved in your student's life. They're going to be there for them in the good times and the bad times. And there's small things, like if you're at a Division I institution, unless your child is a star on a team, the athletic director is probably not going to know their name. Right. I still remember I was walking up my street and you all were walking down with CJ, and I walked by and I didn't know you all at all. And I was just like, hey, CJ, great game. And it was either I think it was earlier that day, and he was like, "Oh, thanks." And I saw your faces, and you were like, "Who is this lady?"
That's what I said. I'm like, "Who is that?" He goes, "I think that's the AD. I'm not sure."
But I feel like those are the type of like touches that I think your students get and the type of support that they have. And then even to your point, and without making this too much of a CMS and CMC commercial, I do think too the alumni networks for all of our teams and our athletic department are very loyal. And there's a connectivity from our alumni to our current student athletes. Our coaches do a great job facilitating those types of conversations and mentoring opportunities. And I think that's just one of the benefits of a smaller, more intimate setting can provide.
Yes. And knowing that you're seen. Like, I mean, I talk about this a lot, but the number one thing we each as humans want to know is that we are enough, right? And you can get recruited. And this is I think one of the hardest things for parents, right, is when we're helping our athlete and you want them to have it all. You want them to go to the best. You want them to have the full ride scholarship. And wouldn't that be great? And then I can get the bumper sticker. And isn't this going to be the best experience ever? And, not always is the answer. And knowing that, chapter 2, whose dream is it? Knowing that they're going, and I love your dad's advice, which is go where you are wanted. And the number of kids that go to the D1 and are told, like, you're never going to play here, or you'll play very limited minutes. Most kids who are going to work that hard are not going to say, yeah, it's no big deal. Sure, I'd love to work out every day. You own me for 80 hours a week. And it's just fine that I'm going to be, picking up the towels and cheering everybody on. If you're going to put in all of that work, you're going to want to be able to make a contribution. And so being able to be in a program where, again, even at a D3 level, there are some of the kids on that roster that I know of that were just like, we love being part of a winning program. I chose, Mudd over MIT because of the academics and the fact that our son gets to be here and be part of a winning program and learning the life skills that he's going to need to be successful. That's why we chose to be here. And that to me is like, yeah, that's what this whole thing is about.
Yeah. And, you live and work in this space, and so do I. It's really hard for especially parents who might not have played a college sport, but for parents and prospective student athletes to really understand it until they live it. But the reality is most students are going to come in and not play very much as a freshman, whether it's at a Division III school, a Division II school, Division I. You are an outlier if you play and start a lot as a first year or a freshman. And how much you love the school and your academic program and the dorms and the fit with your friends, and you believe that the coach believes in you and cares about you, are going to be all the important things, because the joy is not probably going to come for most people from competing. And that's really, really hard for people to understand until they live it. But one that I try very, very hard to repeat to folks. And that's why I think we see students, one, very, very happy who might be playing in a limited role. Also, what we see is the evolution of student athletes, players who don't play a lot their first year, maybe even their second or third year, but keep at it and work hard. And to your point, love being on the team, and then have a breakthrough their junior year, have a breakthrough their senior year. We see that way more than you see at other levels, because to what we're starting to see, particularly with the transfer portal at D1 and D2, yes, for coaches, the stakes are high, particularly in your revenue sports, and people are feeling the pressure from their athletic directors to win. So it becomes transactional on that side. But the students also have become pretty transactional. I'm not playing, I'm going to go somewhere else. Whereas here, I think the students, the coaches, their families are generally pretty bought in to the process, the schools that they're at, the experience that they're having. And when you're happy in all those other aspects of your life, you're a lot better positioned to play well. It might take 6 months, it might take a year, it might take 2 or 3 years, but it probably will happen. I mean, you even saw a miniature version of that with CJ, right? It took him a while to get his footing here, but he made, I think, a choice to come play for a coach where he felt like coach cared a lot about him as a human, and he was in an academic program that was going to help him achieve his goal of leaving here with a very good marketable master's degree. And so it took him a little while, but kind of that deep down probably happiness and making the choices that were right for him put him in position to be very successful about halfway through the season, if I remember correctly.
I can't remember if he spoke about this on the podcast because we've talked about it so much, but for those who haven't listened to CJ's episode, you should go back and listen to it. Erica was saying she was touting it. But he does tell, I think, in fairly honest sincerity. So he came out of graduating from Boston University in 3 years, which was a grind to be able to do that. Very high academic standard, having to spend the whole summer there, literally graduated on a Friday, and on a Monday needed to be at Claremont to check in and start, PS was just getting over a bad relationship and wasn't really sure. We were, as parents, were like, maybe this isn't going to work. Like maybe he's done. And so saying that, like, you do not need to do this. You don't need to go get a grad degree. You've got a great undergrad. You can just move on with your life. So we literally found the place for him to stay, and he came home that first night because he wasn't sure. And I said, why don't we just say, let's do 30 days and just see how you feel in 30 days. And he said, I remember thinking, okay, I can make it for 30 days. And you're absolutely right. It wasn't until November the season kicks off. He's still not quite 100% sure if this is in. I mean, he was all in on the school, but he wasn't quite sure if the basketball was. So the first 4 games, I don't think he played, or he didn't. He definitely didn't start, and he barely played. And of course, my husband and I are looking at each other like, oh, okay, this is a different, than we expected. But also we're wondering, what are you telling yourself, CJ, about what expectations are? And he admitted, he's like, I think a little bit of me was like, oh, I'm D1. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to not dominate, but I'm going to be able to contribute right away. Yet he saw Josh Engel and some of these guys, Rhett, who were working their butts off every single day, no days off, being committed to it. And it was so beautiful to see him go, gosh, since Scal called him in and said, is this how you want the season to go? And he was kind of like, it was a wake-up call for me to say, oh, I'm actually in control of this. And that's the type of beautiful learning moments that we all need, because, when we tell stories in hindsight, I'm sure even yours, as beautiful as it sounds, I'm sure there were some moments in there of, okay, what's going to be next? And how am I going to navigate this path? And when we tell the story, in reverse, it always sounds so romantic. But when you're on the front end of it, looking up the mountain, like, how am I going to get to where I want to go? And that's, to me, the beauty of these opportunities of angels, saints, in my opinion, of people like Scal, who see that, don't panic, don't step on his neck, but say, well, if you want to play here, you're going to have to show me you want to be here. And that is great coaching. And that is, hard as a parent to watch, but important. We knew it was important for him to go through. And sure enough, he bought in. And yeah, by mid-season, he was feeling flow. And by the end of the season, they were, flying in formation, which was beautiful.
Yeah. And so, in your role, I'm sure you coach a lot of parents through that space. But I think preparing parents and students for the fact that, right, we all got on this sports journey because I think inherently we believe in all the good that it can do. And the reminder is that part of the benefit of playing competitive sports is you face a lot of adversity in a safe space. But we sometimes forget that the adversity, while in a safe space, feels very hard to your student, right? Whether it's they're not getting enough playing time, they don't like their roommates, they're not sleeping well, and they're not performing, whatever the adversity that is created, they have an injury, but we have to kind of let them ride that out and let the sports journey happen. To your point, in hindsight, the stories always seem like lovely fairy tales. You have one, I have one, CJ will have one, but the memory that the reality will be full of bumps and bruises, highs, lows, but that's kind of what we signed up for, and the beauty of sports and the advantages it provides all of us at the end of the journey.
So if you could take off your AD hat and put on your mom hat, right? So how old are Will and Caleb now?
Let's see. Caleb is 10, so he is going into 5th grade, and then Miles is 12.
Miles, sorry.
Yes,
yeah.
And he is going into 7th grade, so starting middle school. And Miles is on the autism spectrum, so that also throws another wrinkle into my parenting and my parenting hat.
And does he participate in sports, or he's more of an individual contributor, or what does he like to do?
Yeah, so both boys participate in sports. It looks very different for both. So you've met and interacted with Caleb a little bit more because he absolutely wants to be CJ, we've decided. Even I think wears the same number as CJ in basketball. Caleb has not found a sport that he doesn't like. Caleb wants to compete in everything from Uno to baseball to basketball to flag football, you name it. He's the kid that after school we have to drag him from the park that's across school because he's playing kickball, he's playing capture the flag, who knows what he's playing. He wants to go. Miles, I would say, likes sports, so he likes to watch a basketball game or a football game in particular. We had him in kind of all the basics of different sports when he was little, but I would say one of the symptoms of his autism is he has pretty poor cross-body coordination. So I would like to say with pride that I taught a lot of other people's children how to throw and catch in my life as a tennis coach and how to hit a ball. And although Miles has tremendous hand-eye coordination, I really couldn't teach him how to throw a ball till much later in his life. And that's even something he struggles with today. And so he opted out on his own from baseball and some of the other sports a couple years ago. I think it got too fast for him. And he was like, yeah, I'm ready to retire, which I loved that he used that term. But one of the things we required for both boys is they had to play a sport. And so Miles now participates in cross country and track. The only requirement in our house is that you have to go to practices. We don't make him run in meets, only if he wants to. He has yet to run in a meet. But that's just kind of the deal with Miles. He wears one of those watches that tracks his activity level. He's got to show us that he gets 60 minutes of activity, and that could be anything from jumping on the trampoline to walking around the neighborhood to playing in the backyard with Caleb, or obviously track practice. Checks a lot of those minutes off, but it's a very different yet balanced parenting experience with respect to sports, which has been really fun and rewarding for me and probably provided me with a little more perspective.
And it's honestly the motto of what I talk about when I talk about the book, which is we want to raise athletes for life, right? So what you're having him do is move 60 minutes a day, because what we know is kids who are active at 26 are less likely to have depression and anxiety. And when you add, I'm sure, being on the spectrum to that, that's even more important, I would think, or at least as important for him to be moving his body so that he can be, trying new things and using it in different ways, right?
Absolutely. And, I think because his brain and body are really different from mine or even my husband's, I think doing things physically helps him figure out what works for him in every way, shape, and form. And so it's not only kind of creating those lifelong habits, but a little bit of self-discovery in what works for him. He's somebody who can get very overwhelmed by a noisy classroom. And he's learned that going out to the playground and he will just kind of walk laps and a little bit talk to himself and get kind of the wiggles or the stress of the situation out is a really good coping mechanism. And so being able to pair the physical with kind of the mental and emotional strategies, I think has been helpful for him so far in his journey.
What do you think is his biggest gift to you? What has he taught you?
So Miles is probably the best member of our family, just to be clear. Maybe Miles or our dog Rooney, but Miles is a 12-year-old who is wise, like he's in his 40s or 50s. And it's kind of like having another adult in the house. And so because how his brain works, some of the social traps that you and I might fall into, whether it's people pleasing or providing the answer that you think people want to hear, that just doesn't exist. And so he exists at a level of honesty that's fairly refreshing. You know, it's like I'll come home and I'm racing about the house and stressed from work and all this. And he'll be like, "Whew, you're pretty disorganized today." And I'm like, correct. You know, but it actually, there's like wonderful pauses and it's like, okay, you know, sometimes we've gone through a stretch of pool parties and summer activities with all of their different friends. And, you know, the other day a mom was like, "Oh, Miles, are you going to come to the pool party at our place?" And he's like, "No, I'm just not very interested." And in good news, all of our friends know Miles really well. But it's a little bit refreshing. Like, so sometimes I try to take a page from Miles' book and just be pretty honest with people. Like, yeah, don't really feel like doing that. Because you know what? That's okay. It's okay to say no to things. So he's taught me a lot of lessons in that space. And I think having a child who's neurodiverse, you realize quite quickly what factor nature is in things. And you cannot just assume that your child is like you or your spouse or partner. And you do really have to dive deep to try to figure them out and try to figure out how to guide them through life in the best possible way.
I love the honesty piece because I was listening to Elizabeth Eat, Pray, Love, her being interviewed the other day, and she said, I don't know, she's younger than me, I think, but in her early 50s now, learning how to finally say no. And she said, you know, and it's true, right? Like, same as women, I think particularly, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then why am I doing that? I didn't even want to do that, right? And she talked about learning that, you know, it was just time for her to say, she was, now when people ask me to do things, I say, thank you so much for the offer. No, I will not be doing that. And what we feel as women is, well, I have to give a reason. We'll have to tell them that this, and she goes, and all you're doing is opening yourself up for that person to argue with you as to why you should do it. Right. So he's like the perfect model for that. No, thank you. Right? Like, is the answer.
And I would say, like, a lot of my mom friends here in Claremont, they all love Miles, probably for the exact same reason as they're like, yeah, he just tells us what he thinks. This is great.
Yeah, none of this skirting around and doing it and not really liking it. And they're just, no, thank you. Yeah. Done. Okay. Oh, well, Erica, this is so lovely to chat with you. I loved all of it. Your story for, you know, your inspiration for parents of athletes who are, you know, figuring this out. What would you recommend to somebody who's maybe on the front end of it? They've got a high schooler who's trying to, you know, navigate this. What advice do you tell parents when they're trying to help their athlete figure this out?
Yeah, I think the first step is really simple. And we love to overcomplicate the college search and everything about youth sports. But I would say take them to different competitions at different institutions near you. Take them to a small private Division III institution. And if your student is a baseball player, take them to a baseball game. Take them to an NAIA school. Let them see what a junior college is, because tricking them to the campus with the sporting event gets them on the campus, and they start to get a feel for what college campuses are like. They start to see the different opportunities that are out there. They get to see facilities. And I think that's a really good starter that a lot of folks skip. The coach in me also feels like watching college sports up close and personal is really good player development. And I think even for high school kids, for Caleb, my younger, who is very into every sport, as you know, he sweeps the floor for Stag basketball. He learned a ton about how to play basketball because he was at every game, mostly watching. Sometimes he doesn't pay attention, but he's getting better. Seeing not only the strategy and kind of what happens in a game, but he sees how the coaches talk to the student athletes. He sees how the student athletes act when they do something well or when they do something not so well. And same with baseball. He's a bat boy for the baseball team. I would say 2 years ago, he learned more from watching baseball than he did from anything and he had great coaches, but anything from his coaches taught him because he was watching college sports every day up close and personal. And clearly my children are privileged in that they get a lot of up close. They would tell you they also get forced into a lot of watching of things too. So there's that side of it. But I'd say get your kids on a college campus, seeing the facilities, introducing them to college and kind of the physical side of it, and then getting them to see actual college competitions. Because I think taking it back to my experience, I watched a lot of Washington basketball and tennis, and that is really how I had the goal of wanting to do that. If you can see people doing it, I think it solidifies maybe that dream a little bit more.
I love that advice. My parents took that approach, but we grew up in Missoula, Montana, and we went to the symphony, hated it. I had to play piano. I had to play ballet. We went to tennis camp actually in Sun Valley, Idaho, but they definitely took that. We're going to put out the buffet. You may not take everything on the buffet, but sampling it versus, and I feel like parenting has swung so far the other way around. Well, do you want to do it? You don't? Okay, fine. Like allowing them to have an experience. If you sign up, you finish it, but across everything too, but art, music, and not everybody A is competitive or B likes to be, wanting to be on a team sport, and that's fine too. I have clients who she really just wants to be on her own. Go rock climbing, go mountain biking, there are things that you can do that don't require, a team or a podium or, you needing to try to win a medal or even go play in college. But I love the advice of checking out the different schools and the different campuses. And even if they say, well, I definitely am not a D3 person, they don't know because they've never been there. My kids are I remember, forget what school it was. Oh, Emory in Atlanta. And I said to my daughter, that's a great school. And she's like, oh, no, I saw a TikTok about that. It's not a great campus, and so she had decided that Emory off her list, right? They're making up their minds about a whole school based on a 20-second TikTok or whatever. It is nuts how they're being marketed to kind of constantly, right, on social.
It's very, very true. And yeah, I think in-person, phone-free experiences. I just read The Anxious Generation, so it's probably influencing me significantly. But that's why I'm a big fan of getting on college campuses for just that chance to, I think, connect, see what it's like. If you can get the phone out of their hand during that time period so they can really soak it in, especially for your young athletes, I think there's a lot to learn and build upon from there.
Jonathan Haidt, Anxious Generation, we've talked about it on other episodes, but yes, he's advocating for no cell phones till high school, a lot more face-to-face play, going back to the days where you played in the street until the lights went off and then you came home, right? That's how you get to know yourself and others. And this idea that everything has got to be done on a screen is leading to anxiety and depression. And we're seeing, all of that kind of go off a very mad cliff around. I have a lot of clients now that reach out around feeling not enough. It's the other book with Jennifer Wallace talking about them feeling like their whole value is in their sport or their instrument or their 4 point whatever GPA is the only thing that matters. Getting them part-time jobs, getting them to, mine were actually cleaning the cars last weekend. We bought a power washer and CJ was out there for 3 hours. He was like, this is awesome. I get a chance to be in the sun. I'm like, that's great. I will happily pay you to be out there off of your phone, doing something that's good for your body and your brain and doing something that actually helps us too, right? So finding opportunities like that are always, I think, beneficial. Let's finish by, we always ask all of our guests this. How would you finish this statement? And you could answer it from whatever hat or all hats that you wear. The best athletes I know do this.
The best athletes I know are driven by their own love of and dedication to the game. I have a very good friend who's a sports physiologist, one of the smartest people I know, Mark Kovacs, and he always says to me that, really as parents, the only thing we can do is actually get in the way or inhibit our children's journey. And he's kind of right. I think kids have it in them, and there's going to be God-given talent and genetics and all those certain things. But if your child is motivated and loves it, they will become what they are. They will maximize their talent and become what they're destined to be.
And if it's not in that sport, it's okay, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the other thing is we need to parent the child we have, not the one we wish we had. And
Yes.
if we want our kid to be the D1 soccer player, but he doesn't ever pick up a soccer ball when he's not on the field, and I love the example too of taking them to sports. Like, my daughter never really cared about watching a sport if she wasn't playing it, and she's not going to play in college, and that's fine. But you see those that are super hungry and they want to learn more, and they're learning so much by just watching others play the game. That's somebody who's telling you, showing you that that's their passion, and it needs to be an inside job in order for you to. And that was my dad's favorite quote, quoting our fathers, but like he said, it's an inside job. If you really want this is something that you've got to decide you're willing to work hard for.
Yeah. And as parents, we can't force it, because at the end of the day, it just won't work. It's not coming from them. And, I see it in this seat is we have a lot of tremendously talented student athletes who come here, and most are choosing kind of for the reasons we talked about, the institution, the love of the sport. But given the current sports culture in America and kind of the youth sports machine, there are student athletes who come to school here and come to compete in our teams who don't actually love it. And sometimes they go through that discovery here and they quit, and that's okay too. And so that's really hard, I think, for us as parents, and clearly lots of folks invest lots of time and money and all of that, but being able to remind ourselves to zoom out when necessary and realize that it's your child's journey and that they really are the driver, is pretty helpful for everybody, I think.
Agreed. Thank you so much. So wise and so much great information here, and such a great plug for what you do. And I would love to, anything that I can do to support what you do too. I think we have a very similar mission. And it's so fun to speak with you who you get it. You understand what the mission is as a parent, because you are one, and because you've played at the highest level, and as a Hall of Fame tennis athlete at Washington State, to coaching, to being at the top of the tennis federation. Like, all of those have just set you up perfectly for what you're doing now. So I am so grateful to have you in my son's orbit and our orbit. And where can people find you or follow you or find out more about if they want to become a stag?
Yes. If you want to become a stag or Athena, we have an incredible website, which is cmsathletics.org, and you can find everything about Claremont-Mudd-Scripps and our athletic department, and also our recreation and PE department, which I'm lucky enough to oversee as well. I do not have massive public social followings, but my younger brother and I do write a youth sports parenting blog, which is sidelinesmiles.com. So you can also check that out if you want to hear what I have to say about youth sports parenting.
It's got some good stuff in it. You got to check it out. Thank you so much. Parents, if you enjoyed this, coaches, athletes, please like and share and follow and give us any feedback. And we always we're figuring it out, learning, falling down, standing up, doing it all over again all the time. So thanks for being with us.
Thanks, you. And thanks for sharing CJ.
Yeah.
Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here. And I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you. Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvive's Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference.